This week's episode of Trek Geeks is brought to you by Fansets, the place for amazing pin collectibles. You know, they have over 150 officially licensed Star Trek pins to choose from, with new pins coming out every month. See all the pins and collectibles they have to offer at fansets.com, and stay tuned for this week's special Trek Geeks discount code. Fansets. We are Star Trek.
This week's episode of Trek Geeks is also brought to you by Eagle Moss and the official Star Trek Starships collection. You can bring home the Enterprise D from Star Trek The Next Generation for only $4.95 when you sign up today at st-starships.com/trekgeeks.
Hi, this is Andy Robinson, Elam Garrick on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you are listening to the biggest little podcast this side of the Gamma Quadrant. It's the Trek Geeks podcast with Dan Davidson and Bill Smith. Failure to tune in would not sit well with the Obsidian Order.
From an undisclosed location, which we're probably just going to delete from the record anyway, at Podfleet Command. Greetings, everyone. It's the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant, your independent Star Trek podcast. Welcome to Trek Geeks. We're very excited you're here for episode 159, or as my co-host might say, 159er. And that's his chuckle right there. We may as well introduce him, because he never existed and was never here. You never saw him, so there's no proof of it. He's the very, very clandestine Dan Davidson. And Dan, decloak, buddy. It's time to come aboard.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here for episode 159er. It's going to be a fun discussion, as always. When are they not fun discussions, Bill? Other than when you're involved in the discussion.
Wow.
But I'm really looking forward to it because this week we're going to tackle one of the all-time best episodes of Deep Space Nine as we continue along with the 25th anniversary celebration. We're going to talk about In the Pale Moonlight. Now, before we get started, I do have to apologize. Last week, as many of you listened to the show, and at the end of the show, we always talk about what's up next, and we talked about the fact that we had to delay our conversation with Vic Mignogna, and last week I said, hey, it's going to be this week, woo! Well, I was really excited about it, and I was so excited that I forgot that it's actually not going to be dropping until the first week of December, so people hoping to talk to Vic, or to listen to Vic, you're going to have to wait a couple more weeks, but I got to tell you, it's going to be well worth the wait. So instead, we're going to talk some DS9 with one of my all-time favorite episodes, man.
Well, and one of mine too, and if we've talked about recently, I mean, the writer of this episode, or the guy who contributed the story to this episode, has written a couple of episodes we absolutely love and just didn't realize it was him. This is an episode that made my top 10 list the moment I saw it, and it's been there ever since, and I can't wait to dive in on this particular episode. Dan, something else I can't wait for is for you to tell the fantastic people that listen to Trek Geeks how they can get in touch with us over whatever electronic means of communications they desire.
It's almost as easy as posting the weekly casualty report in the wardroom, my good man. It's very easy to do so. Just head right on over to trekgeeks.com/contact, where you will find a variety of ways to get in touch with either Bill or myself. You can leave us a voicemail. You can Skype chat us. You can fill out the contact form and type us out a personalized message. Or you can just click on that big blue button on the right-hand side of the website and leave us a message with your very own voice using SpeakPipe. And hey, don't forget, we say it every week, and we will continue to do so. The place to be on Facebook these days is Camp Kittimer. Bring your Trek talk and your Trek pictures and just your Trek love, and join over 1,100 other friends to talk all things Trek. Of course, we will also bring you hopefully every Friday, the Friday Commute Celebration, where Bill and I will do our weekly lip sync. So look forward to that. To join the group, just head right on over to facebook.com/groups/Camp Kittimer and be ready to take part in all of the fun. But as always, we would like to thank our wonderful admins, Heather, Jackie, and Dan, for the amazing job that they do running that camp. We could not do it without them. But Bill, please remember that any messages or comments that you leave in any of these places may be used in a future episode.
Was that your best Vreenak?
Not my best, but we might hear that later.
Thank you for being honest. I appreciate that, and so do the listeners. It's what sets Trek Geeks apart from so many other podcasts.
Just how bad I am?
Your honesty. Dan, it's time for the news from TrekNews.net. Spanning the Alpha Quadrant. For all the news on all the Star Treks, yo. It's TrekNews.net. Online at TrekNews.net. Here's what I want to know. Do your dogs howl downstairs when they hear you do that, or are they largely unaffected?
I will not comment.
Well, Dan, up first, Star Trek Las Vegas, our summer destination every year, is only 8 months away. In fact, 261 days as we record this, we'll be in Vegas. And Creation is already letting us know who's going to be attending next summer. The first announcement is a bit of a surprise to you and me.
It was a very big surprise, like a jaw-dropping surprise, at least for me. In addition to Walter Koenig being announced as a return guest, the lovely and talented Nichelle Nichols has been announced as a guest as well. And I found this to be truly wonderful news, but I also found it very surprising based on the recent reports of her declining health and beginnings of dementia. And we saw her in Vegas this year, and we were both quite concerned about how she was doing. We certainly hope her health is improved and she's not being taken advantage of, because it would be great to see her again in Vegas this summer.
Yeah, I don't, as much as, well, let me back up. I'm glad that Walter's going to be there. I'm very excited by that, believe it or not. I love Nichelle. I adore Nichelle. As we've talked about here on Trek Geeks before, Nichelle Nichols was my first celebrity crush, and I was helplessly in love with her as a boy. I love her still today. I still got goosebumps when I got to meet her at STLV this year. But I'm here to tell you, I'm disgusted by the people representing her, and I don't believe that she should be attending conventions anymore due to her condition.
See, that's the thing that I was really concerned with, because we read reports this past summer after Vegas about how members of her family were trying to get court orders to protect her, and so it was a shock to see this announcement come out. So I say that I'd love to see her out there just because I love her so much, but I don't disagree with you at all in that I think it's time that she needs to take care of herself.
Yeah, or that somebody with some degree of responsibility in her life needs to help take care of her. Mm-hmm. And I'm not assessing any blame. I'm not making any accusations. But let's be honest. Nichelle Nichols has signed her photos with blessings, the word blessings, for decades. And in the middle of signing my photo, she stopped, was very confused, and had to ask someone how to spell the word blessings.
Yeah.
I was dismayed. I've had a parent that suffered from dementia who has passed away within the last couple of years, and I understand exactly, well, I shouldn't say exactly. I'm not a medical professional, but I understand on some level what it means. And as much as I adore this woman, I am almost heartsick that she's going to be there. I will stop by and tell her I love her once again this year, because I figure that that's the least I can do. But if anybody repping Nichelle Nichols is listening to this, you should be ashamed.
Well said, man.
Well, Dan, in other news, up next, we now know that there's a Picard show planned, of course, as well as a new animated series. And new rumors are starting to pop up for other shows. This latest one, I'm sure you were very interested in.
Yeah. Dude, I could not be more excited about this rumor, and I hope to God that this comes true. It piqued my interest when I read it, as I'm sure you know, because I was frantically sending you messages. According to reports, Michelle Yeoh is in discussions with CBS for a Star Trek spin-off series about Section 31. You know, I know a lot of people hate Section 31 because it goes against what Star Trek is all about, but I have always loved it. I hope that this is a real rumor and that it happens. I am head over heels in love with this idea, man. That's all I can say.
I have to wonder if an actual, multi-season series is sustainable as far as Section 31. Here's my hope. I hope it's a progression or a series of mini-series. Mm-hmm. Like 4 or 5 episode arcs once in a while with Giorgio and Section 31. I think that would be far more interesting to me as far as the development of that character. What say you, Dan?
I kind of like the idea, if this is what you're talking about, American Horror Story type thing, where every season is completely different, could even bring in new characters who are part of Section 31. Something along those lines, I would be very thumbs up for.
That's very interesting. I hadn't considered that. So the anthology type series that some fans hoped for when Brian Fuller was announced is right. Kind of where you're going.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah.
I might be able to buy that. Probably easier to do in the Star Trek universe with a concept like that than necessarily your average, your usual Starship crew, because no one in Starfleet's average.
You're damn right, mister. You will like it.
Whoa. Hey, this got very ugly very fast.
Section
just like
31.
Your face. Like your face. Yeah. Wow. Well, Dan, speaking of Star Trek Discovery, fans have a couple of new ways to watch season 1 as this episode drops. And I don't know about you, I'm going to be spending some quality time with my television pretty soon.
Yes. There's always good ways to watch Star Trek. As we record this very episode, my Blu-ray set of season 1 is in the mail, and I've been tracking it furiously. It should arrive tomorrow here in Merrimack. But if you don't want to wait for the DVDs and the Blu-rays or whatever you want to call it, you don't have to. And if you don't have CBS All Access, you don't have to wait either, because you can now purchase Discovery Season 1 on iTunes. The entire season is available for $34.99, or you can download individual episodes for $2.99 each, which is kind of cool, but why would you not want the whole season? In addition to the if you purchase the entire season, you're also going to get 11 bonus features, which is very cool. And additionally, iTunes is offering sale prices for all of the other Star Trek live action series. So head on over to iTunes and download some Star Trek, yo.
It's interesting because originally I had pre-ordered Discovery Season 1 on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And then I saw that Best Buy came out with the Steelbook presentation, which I wasn't initially going to do, but I've decided that's what I'm going to do. So I'm actually going to stop by Best Buy on the morrow and pick up my copy of Discovery Season 1. I'm glad it's coming out on Blu-ray. I can't wait to see it on Blu-ray. I think it's going to look fantastic. I've got
it's going to be great.
I've got that fanboy squealing. I'm more interested in the special features. I mean, obviously I've seen season 1 about 3 times already, but, it takes time. You got to watch it sequentially.
Super fan.
Hey, you're a super fan 1701. Don't forget.
That's true. I am. Yeah. So, I'm very excited about it.
I can't wait to hear the updates as you continually watch where the UPS truck is on the map for the live updates. I can just see the messages coming into chat now. Oh my God, he's turned right onto my street.
And now with the new Ring doorbell, I can see exactly when he places it on my step.
I hate you so much.
Hey, as we wrap up with news, Bill, I did want to do one brief mention. As we record today, this is important to me because growing up as a huge Star Trek fan, I was also a huge comic book fan. And we lost a pioneer today. Stan Lee passed away at the age of 95 today. He, of course, created the Marvel Universe, which in recent years has just exploded on cinema and television. And that universe that he created was a wonderful one for me when I was growing up. So I want to pass along my condolences to all of his family and friends and thank him for everything that he contributed. Excelsior. So, Bill, Halloween has the Great Pumpkin, and Christmas has Santa.
Oh, yeah.
And the holiday in between kind of gets ignored, so I'm kind of thinking that Thanksgiving should have something like, I don't know, the magic turkey monster, so that we can get fan sets pins as presents next week. I like that. That's a good idea.
Would the magic turkey monster look like you? Because that's what I envision.
Wow. I was kind of thinking like a Cookie Monster Big Bird mashup from Sesame Street.
Exactly.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
No, seriously, the guys and gals of Fansets are just so awesome. Their pins are awesome. Everything about them is awesome. I love them so much, Bill, that even you are awesome to me right now. And man, that is saying a lot.
Like a lot. It's November, so we're almost coming up on mid-month, which means we're going to get the first of 2 new releases. Dan, don't forget, this month we're going to see 2 awesome ship pins, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And let me see if I get this from memory, because I've been waiting for this. It's the Xindi Aquatic ship.
Yes.
Which, I can't wait to see how that looks on a pin. And then it's also the Kelvin Timeline USS Enterprise, which NCC 1701. I can't wait for both of these pins. They are going to be very quickly added to my growing stable of Fansets pins. I've got a whole wall in my Qubit work that is nothing but Fansets pins, and I'm running out of space. So one of 2 things has to happen. I need a bigger office. Or I've got to start taking out a wall in my home to put these pins on.
Well,
yeah, because they're not going away. So I can't wait to see both these pins. Of course, they're going to be beautifully crafted. This high quality pins. The post construction is fantastic. It's easy to be a fan of Fansets because their product is just so superior.
It is great. And I was talking to the guys at Fansets just this past weekend, and they did want to pass along their apologies. There is a small issue with production for the ships this month. So that's why there's been a slight delay on their website where we haven't seen that Xindi Aquatic starship, but it is coming and we can't wait. I wonder if you can put that in water and see what it looks like, because it's an aquatic. Anyway, a special bonus for Trek Geeks listeners. Here it comes. Every week we do it. If you want to receive 15% off your entire order at fansets.com this week, just enter the word Moonlight at checkout. All capitals, no spaces. Moonlight. MOONLIGHT. The code is going to be available until midnight on Monday, November 20th. So don't delay. Go get your pins, because Fansets is pinpoint accuracy. And we thank our friends at Fansets for sponsoring this week's episode.
Dan, as we transition to the main chunk of content for this particular episode of Trek Geeks, we're going to consider what has become one of yours and my all-time favorite Star Trek episodes, and that is Deep Space Nine's In the Pale Moonlight, as we continue our 25th anniversary celebration of this fantastic series. Typically, when we start one of these, I ask you if you recall the first time you watched it, and I'm fairly certain you do. Mm-hmm. But what I really want to ask you is, do you recall your feeling the first time the episode ended?
I was I loved it. I've loved it from the first time I have seen it. I was excited. I thought it was diabolically genius what Sisko did, regardless of whether how Star Trek it was, but just what he needed to do, which I'm sure we're going to get into very deep discussion with shortly. I thought it was a fantastic episode from start to finish, and the very end was one of the things that I loved the best about it.
I agree with you entirely. I thought it was the most surprising ending to a Star Trek episode in a very long time. At least one that wasn't a cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. And I thought that it presented a character and a Starfleet that was very much in crisis. So, for those who may not have seen it for a while, or at least to level set everybody, why don't you give us like a really brief, high-level, super fast overview to describe this episode? Like a couple of sentences.
Okay, let's see. Federation's losing bad. Sisko needs to do something. He gets Garrick to do bad things, and they trick the Romulans into joining the war against the Dominion.
That's actually really good. Here's usually the phrase that I use. Sisko mortgages everything he and Starfleet believes in to bring the Romulans into the war against the Dominion. Fair?
I like that.
In fact, it's interesting. Here's what Time magazine actually wrote about this episode.
Oh, whoa.
And I quote, "In the Pale Moonlight was the best of the war episodes. The Federation is losing, friends are dying, the planet Beta Z, homeworld of Enterprise's counselor Deanna Troi, has fallen, and Captain Sisko hatches a complicated plan to fabricate evidence showing that the Dominion wants to conquer the Romulans. His aim is to bring Romulans into the war on the Federation side. As Sisko gives up his principles slowly, one by one, in order to make his plan work, you expect Trek's simple moral verities to prevail. It is dumbfounding and chilling when they don't." And I think that perfectly describes what occurs in this episode and how the viewer feels. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. I can remember a couple of occasions during this episode where I'm like, oh my God, what is he doing? What is he doing? The big one is, which is I've never actually gotten over in 25 years, is that he's an accessory to murder. That is just something that has always blown me away. And so it is dumbfounding, and it is chilling that he does what he does and it happens, and it's not, it doesn't stop and he's like, I can't do this on Starfleet. Doesn't matter. He does it, and it's like, wow.
It kind of blew Vreenak away too. Hey-o!
Oh, that was beautiful.
Sorry.
Nice.
Sorry. It's not uncommon for this episode to be ranked among the highest, not only of Deep Space Nine, but of Star Trek in general. And that has honestly surprised me over the years, because as you mentioned just a few moments ago, this is an episode that is very un-Trek-like. There is no brighter future in this episode. There is no doing the right thing despite what it costs in this episode. Because, well, I suppose that's debatable in one sense, but Sisko does the exact opposite of what a Starfleet officer should do, simply just to help ensure the future of humanity. Mm-hmm. And when you think about it in those terms, that's pretty staggering. I mean, I don't think that's something Ben Sisko ever thought he'd have to do when he put that uniform on.
What's the phrase? All's fair in love and war. And this is a perfect example that he thinks anything's fair in order to get this war to end. So he does everything he can to make sure that happens. And it's, I've talked before about, I don't know if I've talked about it on the show. I know I've talked with you about how movies like Saw and all of these other really crazy movies that these people write these stories that are just unbelievable. And where is this imagination coming from that people can write these stories? And this is a perfect example for the Star Trek writers to go in and do everything exactly opposite of what we, the fans, would expect in a Star Trek episode. And they make it work perfectly. This is a perfect example of a non-Star Trek episode that is a classic and one of the all-time best, like you said, in the entire Star Trek franchise.
I mean, let's be honest here. Sisko makes some incredibly horrifying moral choices in this episode. It's like he says in his log, he lied. Yeah, he admits it. He's essentially an accomplice to murder. Or if you go back to the beginning of the episode, the format of this episode is something I think is just absolutely beautiful. I think it's perfect. The entire episode is a captain's log, and we see the entire thing in flashback. It's in a way, it almost calls me back to the way TOS was with the captain's log, where in the first few episodes of TOS, the log was always in past tense, and we would see the action as if it were a flashback.
Yep.
And that's exactly what happens with this log. I mean, he's like, and Sisko says, it's only been 2 weeks. I need to talk about this. I have to justify what's happened, what I've done, at least to myself. I can't talk to anyone else, not even to Dax. Maybe if I just lay it all out in my log, it'll finally make sense. I can see where it all went wrong, where I went wrong. And that's really kind of off-putting from the moment you hear it. Here's a Starfleet captain admitting to himself and to his log, essentially us, that he's done something that is not good. And it's very uncertain as to what it means as we start to get into this episode. I'm really kind of blown away just by the initial captain's log, because Sisko, who is normally very confident, is anything but in that opening teaser.
You don't ever see him drinking either. And that actually, I mean, I say that tongue in cheek, but I'm also serious when I say it. You don't really ever see Ben drinking. And here he is telling us, the computer, everything that went wrong. And he's got a drink in his hand for most of the time. And he's got his uniform caught me with his britches down type of thing. And it's not a Sisko that we're used to seeing, but at the same time, I can totally see Sisko doing this stuff based on what we've seen and what we will see with Eddington and with the episode with Bahala and what his obsession with that. It's not out of the realm of what we might expect from Sisko based on what we've seen up until this point.
Well, and it's interesting to me because in this episode, he uses his captain's log as a sort of de facto confessional. He lays out in the open his sins, for want of a better word, for the record, or at least so far as we know before we get to the end. And it makes me wonder if he's ever felt compelled to do this in the past. Certainly, in maybe the days after Wolf 359, or maybe after he met Picard when he had such, intense rage and then resolved it, after Emissary. It makes me wonder if he's ever used his log before as that sort of confessional. And maybe I'm the only person that's ever wondered that. I don't know, but I figured it was a very interesting and uncomfortable spot for us to see Sisko in.
I've never thought of him doing that in the past. I think with everything that, he's become more and more central to the Dominion War as it's gone on, and more one of the leaders. I think Admiral Ross is probably the only other person who's higher than him, at least as far as I can tell. And the stress of being in that position, knowing that the Federation is being beaten as badly as it has been. When I look at that and then look at some of the examples that you just mentioned, as bad as those things were, like Wolf 359 and everything like that, I don't think he has been pushed to what he's been pushed to at this point in the war. And I think I think he feels singularly responsible for what's going on. As Vreenak points out, and the man who started the war with the Dominion. So it's someplace we haven't seen him before, in my opinion.
It's interesting that he calls out specifically that he can't talk to Dax about this. Dax, who is probably his oldest friend. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder if Jadzia would have understood that, or at least, let me rephrase, if Dax would have understood.
Yeah.
Because Dax could have very easily have been in this particular situation, as an advisor to Benjamin.
Sure.
One of the things that strikes me about this episode is that, and I'm going to bring this into modern day for a second, is that people love this episode because it depicts a Starfleet at war and the things that they do to save the future of humanity. Yet, however, we've seen recently that people have issues with Star Trek Discovery for doing this exact same thing. And it makes me scratch my head a little.
Yeah.
Now, certainly this episode encapsulates it into 43 minutes or whatever the runtime is for the episode. But Michael Burnham is not in all that different a spot in Star Trek Discovery in a way.
I take that with a grain of salt, to be honest with you, man, because as we know, people are going to complain about issues in Discovery simply to complain about issues in Discovery. If they would take a moment and do what you just did and explain one side versus the other when we're looking at what happens on Deep Space Nine and what we see happen with Discovery, they might have a different opinion. But unfortunately, for the people that are going to dislike Discovery, no matter what happens, they're just going to come up with anything. And I mean, I may be being a little extreme and a little harsh with that statement, but I stand by it based on what we've seen. The people that love Discovery, they can compare these two episodes without a problem. The people that don't like Discovery won't, because they don't want to. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, I think it makes perfect sense. Yeah. But it was just something that struck me as I rewatched this to prepare for our discussion tonight. It's like, the situations really aren't all that different. I mean, humanity is on the line. The Dominion's going to take over Beta Z in this episode, and that means they've got a foothold in the Alpha Quadrant, which means very soon the Federation is going to be surrounded on a couple of fronts. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot at stake, because if they can take Beta Z, what else can they take?
Yeah. The thing that just popped into my mind as you were talking was Sisko brings the Romulans into the war doing what he needs to do, and people are okay with that. Starfleet gave L'Rell a button to blow up the entire Klingon homeworld.
Yeah.
It's just as harsh. I don't know. We could go back and forth on that one all night.
Well, Dan, we're going to have more of our discussion on In the Pale Moonlight in just a moment, but we want to take a few moments to tell everyone about Eagle Moss and the official Star Trek Starships collection. They're announcing new ships to the line all the time, and there truly are some amazing things on the way in 2019.
I can't wait to see all the different things that they're going to be getting out there to us fans in 2019. These ships are amazing. They're officially authorized by CBS Studios. They're available only from Eagle Moss Collections. And I got to say, Bill, they're fantastic. You and I have several models sitting at our desks, and we love them. We love showing them off. Each model's made of die-cast metal and high-quality ABS materials, and then they're hand-painted with reference to the actual CG models used in production, or photos of the original studio models if they still exist. So the detail is there, that is for sure. It's the ultimate collection of vessels from across the Star Trek universe, from the original series all the way up through DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, TNG, the movies, and I'm not going to do it this week. I'm going to give everybody a break, even Star Trek Beyond.
As Dan has been reading that copy and making his comments, I've been flying my little Eagle Moss NCC 1701 in front of my webcam, and he has had no idea. This thing sits on my desk all the time, and I love it, Dan, because you can see it right now. It's in its display base, which I absolutely love because it just makes the Enterprise look like it's floating there.
It does.
Every ship in the Eagle Moss fleet comes with one of these display bases, plus a collector's magazine featuring behind-the-scenes info. There's design sketches in there, and a breakdown of the technology on board, which I just love every time I get one of these ships. So subscribe to the collection today to receive your first ship, the USS Enterprise NCC 1701D, for only $4.95 with free shipping. Additional models, and there are already close to 150 of them, believe it or not, are going to ship twice monthly, and they're going to be delivered directly to your door. Now, as a subscriber, you are also entitled, get this, Dan, to free gifts worth over $90.
What?
Yeah. I mean, for only $4.95, you're getting all this stuff. And of course, you can cancel your subscription for any time, although I don't know why you'd want to. Full details can be found, of course, at st-startrip. Let me try that again.
Try again.
Full details can be found at st-starships.com/Trek Geeks.
There you go, buddy. I knew you had it in you, man. But for folks who don't want to join the subscription, you can purchase your own starships individually by going to shop.eaglemoss.com or heading over to your local comic book shop. And for just a few dollars more, you can also take part in a great, great collection. It is awesome stuff.
And sincere thanks to Eagle Moss and the official Star Trek Starships collection for sponsoring this week's episode. So, Dan, let's talk a little bit about Benjamin Sisko. He, as we've observed before the discussion about Eagle Moss, he's in a very different place. And in this episode, there is compromise after disastrous compromise. In a way, it's not really death by 1,000 cuts, but every time he turns around, this thing snowballs. It's like dominoes continuing to fall one after another. And he's hoping at some point for it to all stop, but it just doesn't. It gets about as worse as it can be. And it starts with Garak saying, yeah, by the way, I'm gonna need a guy named Graythan Tolar.
Yeah, actually, it starts with the first word you just said is where it starts, and that's Garak. But yeah, Graythan Tolar. I'm still trying to figure out what race he is because I don't know if we ever find out. I'll have to look at that. But yeah, let's bring somebody who's going to be executed by the Klingons, which must make him pretty bad. Let's bring him in to help us out. I'm sure everything will be just fine.
He's about to be executed by the Klingons.
Yeah, well, no big deal.
Yes, yeah. So he hasn't done much. So the first thing Garak does is say, "Hey, we're going to need a criminal." And so Sisko's like, okay. So he uses some muscle. He gets Tolar released and sent to Deep Space Nine. And when Tolar finds out that Garak is involved, he sobers up almost instantly, man.
Oh, yeah. It's another thing that I love about what Deep Space Nine does is how they handle Garak. And just the name. And that guy was like, whoa, what? Okay, I'll go to my quarters. I mean, he's just, Garak instills fear in everybody.
Well, and just keep in mind, Garak's not a member of the Obsidian Order. What are you talking about?
No, he's just a tailor. He's a tailor, and he was a gardener on Romulus, man. That's all.
Plain, simple Garak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're not afraid of a guy because he's plain, simple tailor. I'm just going to throw that out there. So already Sisko is not at ease. And then what does Tolar do? He gets into trouble. So then, just a little. So Sisko has to do something else that's totally out of character for him. And he has to bribe Quark, of all people, to drop the charges. Oh, I know. You're face palming right now. And I think I'm doing that mentally too, myself.
Because, all of these things, the slimiest thing that Sisko has to do is stoop down to Ferengi bribery. Because Tolar kind of stabbed Quark. So
kind of.
It happens. It's Quark. It's Quark. So, but yeah, so and you can see Sisko, it's like, he's got like cooties all over his body because he has to bribe Quark in order to make sure that nothing is on the record of Graythan Tolar being on the station. And that's probably, I gotta say, I'm joking. That's gonna be one of the things that Sisko probably hates most about this whole thing.
Well, and he's got to provide some kind of explanation to Odo.
Yeah.
Odo, who is, the law, he's the man on the station. Mm-hmm. And Sisko has to say, he's not really a friend, but he is doing some work for me. I would say stop right there. What do you mean that a criminal who is going to be executed by the Klingons is doing work for a Starfleet officer? Could you kind of back up and unpack that for me?
I can't. It's classified. Oh, that was too Kirkish. I'm sorry.
That really was. You're crossing your captains.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, but I will say one thing, man, is as much as Sisko hates doing the bribery with Quark is the happiest Ferengi in the world. You can just see how excited he is that humans will go to whatever extremes they need to. And he proves his point that he's been talking about for years when this bribe happens. I thought it was brilliant.
Oh, I agree with you. Quark, I think, couldn't be happier unless somebody unloaded a big bag of latinum, and that's essentially what happens.
That's right. Yep.
Where's Sisko going to get latinum? I'm just going to throw that out there.
It's around. More in stomach, maybe.
It's under his pillow. Those weird triangular shaped pillows on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, it's so comfortable looking.
So as if that's not enough, the only thing that's going to get them the optolytic data rod is, I don't know, one of the most controversial and banned substances in the Federation, which is a whole bunch of biomimetic gel. And that scene with Julian in Sisko's office is outright fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bashir says everything he should say, the thing that we'd want a Starfleet officer to say.
Yep.
And yet Sisko still hands him a pad with orders on it.
I'm going to need this order in writing, please, sir. I love that line, and I love that scene because you just said it. He's being Starfleet, and Sisko isn't. And you can see the dramatic differences between the two in just that minute and a half scene. It was brilliantly acted, and it really showed the core of what was going on in this episode. I did like, however, that even though Bashir knew how wrong it was, he was going to follow the order by Sisko as much as he didn't want to. That's what Starfleet's about also.
Exactly. But you look at the look that Sid has on his face in that scene, and it says two things. It says, one, what the hell are you talking about? And two, I can't believe you, of all people, are asking me for this.
Right. You got to wonder how much respect was lost between Bashir and Sisko because of that scene.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought the first time I saw it. Anytime that Dr. Bashir has the moral high ground, it's really a questionable situation, because this was a guy who was kind of a creeper the first couple of years.
Kind of.
Yeah, well, I'm being generous because he did something good in this episode. Granted, we're 6 years in, but but that scene is really kind of off-putting, because it's with that you realize just how deep Sisko is in now, and you think that it can't get any worse. But oh no, my friend, oh no, it does.
What?
And yeah. So they get the data rod prepped. So Tolar has created the holographic simulation. They write it to the one-time only optolytic data rod, and they give it to a Romulan senator named Vreenak, who shows up on Deep Space Nine by invitation. Yeah, that's a situation that just doesn't really go as planned, does it, Dan?
Yeah, you said it. After every one of these steps, you can say, can't get any worse. And it gets worse. And it gets worse. And after the biomimetic gel, can't get worse. He gives the rod to Vreenak. Can't get worse. Vreenak knows it's a forgery. That's worse.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate snowball of hell episode. And, when you're watching other TV shows where things just keep going wrong for somebody, there's a movie called Pure Luck with Martin Short and Danny Glover. Things just go wrong and wrong and wrong. And you don't feel bad. And you kind of like, wow, that's this poor guy. With this, oh my God, you're just like, I'm doing it again. I'm facepalming because like, oh my God, can it get any worse for Ben? And it just does. And it gets worse and worse. And you're like, when is it going to end? Because it doesn't seem like it ever will.
Well, and then there's his captain's log at the beginning of Act 5 of this episode. I'm going to read that because I just happen to have it here in front of me.
That's good preparation.
So it all blew up in my face. All the lies and the compromises, the inner doubts and the rationalizations, all for nothing. Vreenak was furious. I can't say that I blamed him. I'd have reacted the same way. After telling me in no uncertain terms that he intended to expose this vile deception to the entire Alpha Quadrant, he got back in his shuttle and headed home. There didn't seem to be anything more to do, so I went back to work. And 2 days later, we got the news. And Dan, what news was that?
Shuttle go boom.
Vreenak got blowed up.
Blowed up, yo. Uh-huh. Mr. Garrick, that slimy, sneaky son of a bee.
So...
But yeah,
this makes the Tal Shiar believe that the Dominion is responsible. Because what are they going to find in the wreckage? They're going to find an optolytic data rod that's damaged. And they have to assume that what's on there is real because it could have been damaged in the explosion. So what else? What other conclusion is there?
And obviously, I'm sorry to interrupt, and obviously the senator was killed because he had this evidence.
So... Sisko goes down to Garrick's tailor shop and punches him halfway to Tuesday.
Trek Tuesday.
And he discovers that Garrick's plan really was to assassinate Vreenak all along. Really?
But let me ask you this. Aren't you happy that that's what Garrick's plan was the whole time? Because he knew that was what was going to have to happen in order to get the Dominion into the war. He used Sisko like a puppet the entire time to get that to happen, but it's what we wanted to happen anyway.
Well, in fact, you segue us beautifully right into the next discussion point, which is Garrick. So I was looking at Memory Alpha for this episode, as I am often wont to do when we talk about Star Trek. And there was this nugget in Memory Alpha. Andrew Robinson nominates this as one of his favorite episodes after The Wire, Improbable Cause, and The Die is Cast. According to Robinson, this episode is about Garrick teaching Sisko that, quote, "You can't go to bed with the devil without having sex," end quote. And that's from the Star Trek Deep Space Nine Companion, page 555. The object lesson here is there is a cost to everything. The question is, are we willing to pay it? Mm-hmm. And I find it interesting that Andy Robinson chose those words because it really does sum it up quite aptly, I think.
I think so too. And I actually have the Star Trek Deep Space Nine Companion. So when we are done recording, Bill, I am going to turn to page 555 to read that for myself because that is an amazing quote. And it is 100% accurate when you're talking about this episode. I think it's great that Andy Robinson thinks this is one of his favorites. I was going to say that this one is right up there with The Wire. I hadn't thought about Improbable Cause and The Die is Cast, but it's right up there, and it's really it really makes me feel good that someone who played such an important role in this episode also feels as strongly about it as we do.
Yeah, you figure Sisko goes to Garrick because he can't really bring himself to do these things. He needs somebody who he knows can without hesitation. And really the only person on board is Garrick. Nobody else can fill this role. And Garrick, manipulates everyone he comes into contact with in this episode, including some he doesn't come into contact with. Mm-hmm. And ultimately Sisko gets what he wanted. And he doesn't necessarily have to do it himself or use his own hands, although in a way, I think he really does.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It goes to it really makes you, if you really want to sit and stop and think about how the mind of an Obsidian Order agent works, you don't have to go any further than this episode. You don't have to watch any other episode, but this one possibly to get that idea that he can cause ripples without even being near the people that he's affecting because he's so good at what he does as this Obsidian Order agent. Oh, but wait a minute. He's not an Obsidian Order agent or I can't even say it.
Well, and everybody that Garrick knows that he calls on for this favor is murdered on Cardassia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's how far-reaching this is. I mean,
within a day. Yep.
Within a day. Garrick tells Sisko earlier in the episode he's going to have to call in all of his favors, and he proceeds to, and to a person, every single one of those people is murdered. And that just amps the stakes up.
Yeah.
The body count rises. It's not just a Romulan senator, his 4 guards, and 1 criminal. It's also everybody that Garrick talked to on Cardassia. So already there's at least a couple of dozen people.
Do you think that Garrick has a problem with that after the fact that he called in all these favors for Sisko and now all those favors have dried up and they're all dead?
I don't think he does if it helps Cardassia become liberated from the Dominion.
Yeah, that's true.
I think if they don't win the war, I think it's a different story. But I think that probably the only reason Garrick agreed to do this is because he knows Sisko and knows that if Sisko's coming to him, it's that bad.
Yeah, and it was that bad. And all it cost was 1 dead senator, 1 criminal, and the self-respect of 1 Starfleet officer. I don't know about you, Bill, but I'd call that a bargain.
Well, and even then, Garrick doesn't exactly get the body count right.
No, he doesn't. Not at all.
Because there are 4 Romulan guards on board that shuttle.
That's
The equivalent of red shirts.
Exactly.
So let's talk about some central questions. First of which, is this the most un-Star Trek episode ever?
I don't know. It all depends on how you want to define un-Star Trek. We've talked about how this is, I mean, it's an un-Star Trek episode. When I say what I just said, I mean other episodes. How un-Star Trek are they? I mentioned before the finale of Discovery this year with giving L'Rell the button literally to destroy the entire Klingon homeworld. I mean, that's pretty un-Star Trek, but it happens. I don't know, because there are some Star Trek elements to this episode. We talked about it a little while ago with the way Julian is. He's still going to stand up as a Starfleet officer, but I mean, it's on Star Trek. I mean, there's no two ways about it, but the most on Star Trek episode ever, that's kind of hard for me to answer, buddy.
Okay. I can accept that as an answer.
What about you?
I'm going to go with, I think so. You know, if there's an episode that really kind of is the opposite of everything we watch Star Trek for, with its politics and its assassination plots and its lies and its cover-ups and its twists, I think that this one probably is it. But that leads me to my next question, which is, if we love Star Trek and the message, why do we love this episode?
I actually think part of the reason is because it's on Star Trek. It's not expected, and it does it in a way that works. If this was an episode that just sucked and didn't make any sense and had no ramifications and it was on Star Trek, people wouldn't care about it at all. But it works, and it works perfectly, and it has to work because of the situation that the Federation is in at the time. And I think that's one of the reasons why it is so loved. And you can have episodes of the series that aren't Star Trek, which are still fantastic, and love them. Maybe just for straight entertainment value, maybe for the acting, maybe for the special effects. But for me, the un-Star Trekness of it is why I love it so much, because we're not expected, but it works great.
So this takes me to my next question, which is, does this episode work with any other character than Garrick? I mean, Does it have to be Garrick in this episode?
Yep. Who else? Who else possibly could it be? It can't be Dukat. Dukat would never do it. It can't be Odo. It can't be any of the cast that we know. No. If Garrick is not part of this series, this episode, in my opinion, doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, I think. I think that it has to be Garrick, and I don't think that this episode could have worked with anyone else.
And
go ahead.
And here's the other thing, Bill, is this episode speaks volumes to the character that was not a regular on the show yet should have been. This is a perfect example of what Garrick was like. We got to see more of what Garrick is like in this episode than any of the other ones, including ones like The Wire and Improbable Cause and the Diaz Cast. This one shows what Garrick was and still is. And I think that's another reason why this episode doesn't work without him.
I think you put it perfectly. I can't envision another character in Deep Space Nine for whom this works. Not Romulan, not Klingon, not Cardassian. It's got to be Garrick, because Garrick is it. Next one is the blood of all the Romulans that die in the war on Sisko's hands now? And can he really live with it?
That's a good question, and I would say yes and no. I actually think a lot of the blood is on Garrick's hands. Sisko went to him, and Garrick put this plan in motion. Now, you can look at it as Sisko is the top of the chain, so all responsibility eventually falls to him. But he's not the one that played all of the parts the way that Garrick did to get exactly what happened to happen. So for me, I think a lot of that blood is on Garrick, who probably doesn't care. but I do think Sisko can live with it if it was on his hands.
Interesting. I do think it's on his hands, and I go back to Act 2 to make that decision. He's like, maybe I should have put a stop to it right there. Maybe I should have said, thank you very much for your input, Mr. Garrick. I will take your suggestion under advisement, and then gone back to my office and forgotten the whole thing. But I didn't. He makes a choice to involve Garrick and to proceed, because at any point he could have bailed out of this.
He could have, but I'll give you I'll counter with this. He could have done exactly that, but once he piqued Garrick's interest, if he had gone the other route and shut it down, Garrick would have manipulated him to the point where he would have started it up again. I firmly believe that.
Okay,
so
that's fair.
I think that had he decided to shut it down, it still would have happened. It may not have happened exactly as we saw it, but Garrick, he had the idea. Once that idea was planted in Garrick's head and he started working on what he was going to do, it was going to happen because he's that good at what he does.
Well, alrighty. And then lastly, you remember last time we talked about Inter Arma Einem Sealant Legas, we talked about Admiral Ross, and we talked about his sort of culpability and what blood was on his hands as a result of his dealings with Section 31, with the Romulans, with whomever. Who's the, not really that either of them's a villain, but who's the bigger villain in this, Sisko or Ross?
Oh, that's a great question, man. I don't know. With right off the top of my head, it's really hard for me to decide. I would have to say that with this, what the magnitude of what happens with this incident, bringing the Romulans into the war and the amount of deaths that are going to occur, I might have to lean towards Sisko, but that kind of takes away from what I just said a few minutes ago about Garrick. But if I'm choosing between Sisko and Ross, I'm thinking Sisko. I really think with what happens in the Pale Moonlight versus in Baga is more.
I thought you were Cab Calloway there for just a second.
I can't do that because of Spotify.
Yeah, Spotify screwing us again.
Damn.
I have to agree with you. I think that, and I mean, they're both Starfleet officers. They're both trying to do what's right to ensure the future of humanity and our survival. Mm-hmm. But clearly they make some questionable decisions. There's sort of that gray area in Deep Space Nine. And I think that both of these characters encounter it, but I have to agree with you. I think Sisko clearly goes further over the line than Ross does. Yeah. And, anybody from Romulus is going to pay the price because they were duped into joining the war. Yep. Very fascinating set of circumstances.
It is Spock talk. I like that. Fascinating.
Spock talk debuting in 2022 from Trek Geeks. So Dan, final thoughts on In the Pale Moonlight. Certainly an episode that can be watched and rewatched and watched again. But does it get any better for you? I mean, it's already awesome, but do you appreciate it even more now?
I think I do, because as with anything that you watch over and over again, you're going to find little things here and there every time you watch it again. And I can't pull out specific examples right now, but I know that has happened on many occasions. That I find this one little thing that I didn't realize before and helps tie all things together. And the other thing that's great about this episode is even people who may not have seen it in a long time really just sit there with their mouth open. And you do that after you've seen it 20 times. You sit there with your mouth open, seeing what's going on. When I watch this to review for the episode that we're recording here today, I watch with my wife, as I always do with these episodes. She loves this episode. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. She's like, what's going to happen? Oh my God, it's a fake. And it was just, watching other people watch this is also something that makes me enjoy it all that much more, because it's so not what they expect either.
I have to agree with you. The first time I saw this episode, I actually saw it alone, and I was just blown away. Kind of like Vreenak. And
boom, boom, boom.
Hey-o, I'll be here all week. And it still gets better and better for me with every consecutive rewatch, because I'm all in on it. Even though I know what's happening, I sit there and I go, oh man, I wince every time that this gets further away from Sisko, because it's just written that well. So, right. Dan, that is In the Pale Moonlight. It's one we recommend everybody rewatch. Or if you haven't watched it in a long time or never seen it, it's definitely one to add. All you need to know is that there's a war going on, because I think this episode kind of stands alone.
It does. It does stand alone, but at the same time, the ramifications for what takes place later because of this episode really, really gels. What's the word? Great? Because great's not a good enough word. It's okay. It's thumbs up. Yeah, it's an all right episode.
It's all right. It's all right. Dan, you know what else is way better than all right? That's the music of 5-Year Mission. We are so very excited that we get to play their music on each and every episode of Trek Geeks. We want everyone to head on out to 5yearmission.net. Download Year 4, which is their latest album, their latest spectacular album, I might add. Wow. I was listening to it on the way home, as a matter of fact, tonight in traffic. No better way to spend that time than listen to some 5YM. So go on out to 5-Year Mission, get all their albums, and become a huge, huge fan.
You knew it was inevitable, Mr. Smith, that this was going to happen this particular week on Trek Geeks based on the episode that we're talking about. And now we're talking about 5-Year Mission. You know, if Rittenhouse discovered that the drums were a forgery, if he realized that we were trying to trick them into the war, it could push the musicians even farther into the enemy camp. If worse came to worse, they could actually join the war against us. And I had the distinct feeling that victory or defeat would be decided in the next few minutes. It's a FARC!
I don't know why I didn't expect that.
You didn't expect that? Are you kidding me?
I should have. I would have believed that you would bring something to the table that I just that was going to blow me away, like Vreenak. Boom. But I don't know why I wasn't expecting It's a FARC. Now I can never hear that scene the same way again. Damn you.
Mission accomplished. Yes.
That's 5yearmission.net. Dan's FARCism aside, it is a FARC. Go get all those tunes, yo. We promise you're going to love them. Dan, next week we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about something that we are sure a lot of people who listen to Trek Geeks can relate to.
Yes, we are. I am so looking forward to this topic, buddy, and kudos to you for this idea. We were talking about what we wanted to come up with for next week's episode, and this is just fantastic. You know, the holidays are fast approaching, and that usually means adding to our Star Trek collectible collections, if that is a real phrase. So with that in mind, next week we're going to talk about our all-time favorite things from our individual Star Trek collections. Toys, uniforms, models, games, autographs, pictures. It's all fair game, and we're going to discuss it next week on Trek Geeks, your independent Star Trek podcast.
I can't wait for this. We're going to talk about some things that I've never owned and wished I had, too, because that list grows by the year. Going all the way back to the 1970s. I tell you what, man, I wish if I'd had some of those toys now. Ooh.
There's so many cool things, and as we get older and look back at some of these things that were out in the 70s, we're like, oh my God, why do I not have one of those?
I know. Or why did I not keep it? So,
ouch.
Yeah, Dan, that's next week on an all-new Trek Geeks. Of course, for more great Star Trek discussion, we want everyone to check out the Tricorder Transmissions. They're online at thetricordertransmissions.com. And of course, for all the news on all the Star Treks, please visit our great friends at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode 159 of the Trek Geeks podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
Computer, delete that entire Coconut podcast.
Delete your face.
Really?
Music for Trek Geeks is provided by 5-Year Mission. They are writing one song for each episode of the original series. Download their music at 5yearmission.net. Trek Geeks, a Star Trek podcast, is a production of Coconut Media Works, executive producer Bill Smith. For even more Star Trek discussion, check out Discovering Trek, a Star Trek Discovery companion, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and discoveringtrek.com.
Bing bong!
What's that?
I was waiting for the air to run out of your lungs. How are you?
I'm good. Oh my God, The Haunting of Hill House is so awesome.
You're through episode 8?
7. We're watching 8 after we record.
Okay.
Yeah.
We finished it last night. I'm not going to color your perception.
Okay.
I think
that's fine.
I think I know how you're going to react to the finale.
Okay.
And I look forward to hearing your take on it at some point.
All right. It'll be this week. I guarantee it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm very sore.
Congratulations, man. You should be very proud of yourself for what you did yesterday at the Park of Fenways.
Yes, as for those who may not have listened to the outtake last week, and well, of course, you may not hear this if you listen to the outtake this week, or don't listen, I guess.
What?
I ran the Spartan race that was inside Fenway Park, home of the Boston Red Sox, and it's only 3 miles, but there's about 20 obstacles, and it is not easy.
No.
People who say that the stadium Spartans are easy compared to the other ones, I'm sure they are, but they're not easy.
Yeah, it looks. I am definitely doing it next year based on the videos that you've sent me. But it does not look easy. It looks challenging, but it looks fun at the same time.
And I walked a good portion of the course simply because I had to because of my foot. Mm-hmm. It took me about 90 minutes to finish, which is about twice as long as an average person.
Look at it this way: you're getting to enjoy the park that much longer.
I saw parts of Fenway Park that I never knew existed.
Huh?
Various concourses, and there's a garden where they grow things inside Fenway Park.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and I didn't obviously get enough information on it because I was in the middle of running a race. But I was fascinated by that concept. I'm like, wow. So there's some kind of sustainable garden that is inside Fenway, presumably for either spices or herbs, or maybe it's hops. I don't know. But I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I think one of the things that I liked most yesterday when you texted me about your experience and were sending me messages was that you were in the visitors' locker room. Was that it?
Yeah, I was in the visitors' clubhouse. Yeah.
The visitors' clubhouse doing push-ups, and you probably did more athletic work than the entire Los Angeles Dodgers when they were visiting for the World Series.
That's probably true.
That was awesome.
So we come into the visitors' clubhouse, and immediately you have to bust out like 20 push-ups, and Spartan push-ups are different. Your chest has to hit the floor, and then your arms have to be extended out, almost like Superman.
Yep.
Before you start your next push-up.
Wow.
And you bang out 20 of those, and then you leave and you head out through the tunnel, through the visitor dugout, onto the field, and then around the warning track for the final lap. And it was an amazing experience, I'm not going to lie. It didn't teach me about the things I couldn't do, because there was plenty I couldn't do. Yep. It helped me realize all the things I was absolutely capable of. And
nice.
Somebody made a joke today that I got a participation trophy, and no, there is no participation trophy at a Spartan race. You show up and you either finish or you don't. And if you finish, you get a medal. And I got one, baby.
There you go.
It was hard work and worth every minute of it.
That's awesome. I can't wait to do it with you next year, man. I'm really looking forward to it.
So I have an idea. And we're going to kind of drop this here in the outtake. And we'll see what kind of response we get from people. I've had the idea for a live show that we can do, not probably in 2019, but maybe 2020 in Vegas. And instead of just a live podcast recording, the idea I have is sort of not really a TED Talk, but sort of that type of presentation about Star Trek. So the challenge I'm going to issue to listeners is, what would you want to see in a presentation like that? Because obviously TED Talks are personal on some level, but they tie into a greater subject matter. But I think that that's something that we could make entertaining and also very relevant to Star Trek as it exists or has existed over the last 50 years. So what do you think about that?
I think that's very interesting. It'll be very cool to see what people's initial thought is on it. So, anybody listening to the Trek Geeks podcast outtakes this week, please leave your comments over at Camp Kittimer, blah, 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 blah. But,
or it can hit us anywhere, whether it's social media or email or podcast at trekgeeks.com or wherever they want. They could leave us a voicemail on Skype.
Yep.
But I'm just going to sort of throw that idea out there to germinate. I have a couple of ideas in mind, but I'm curious to see what people think if they make it this far into the outtake.
Yep.
So, which is a risk. It's a risk anytime.
Yeah, I'm shutting off right now. Bye.
Oh, it's the best show ever. So yeah, that was just a sort of an idea I had, and you and I can talk about that more offline. But I was sort of playing through it during the drive home because I really don't know what it was that gave me the idea either.
You come up with good ideas from time to time.
Yeah,
you came up with a really good one today, which we'll be talking about when we record the show here in a few minutes, which people will have heard by the time they get to the outtake. Wow, that's really just weird, really hard to wrap my head around. But yeah.
It's sort of timey-wimey.
Yeah, Dr. Brown and the DeLorean going 88 miles an hour.
Yeah, no, let's pick some good time travel.
All right, let's come a long way for the power of Genesis. Wow.
Come a long way for the power of Genesis. And for anyone asking, that was actually Bill and not Dan.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. Yeah, I'm sure everybody knew that, Bill.
Why, you're a jerk. I'm going to take my Spartan medal, which is very heavy, and beat you across the face.
I was going to say, you could swing that across the like do a whip shot and probably smash my temple right in.
Oh my God.
I'm giving you good ideas.
Oh, you made my day. I'm going to daydream about this for weeks.
Go ahead. Make my day.
So if you can believe this or not, Thanksgiving is next week.
I don't believe it. Really?
Thanksgiving in the United States, I should say, for people who listen around the world. And so I'm going to put you on the spot. And since we're in the outtake and we can do whatever we want in this part of the show, what are you thankful for by way of the podcast this year, Dan?
You are putting me on the spot. It all comes down to you and me, man, to be perfectly honest. I mean, we're doing something that we love based on our friendship, and it has just continued to grow over the past year. I think, I don't want this to sound selfish, but I'm really thankful for the recognition that we've gotten over this year. I mean, being invited to our first con to be a vendor just a few weeks ago at Albany was a tremendous honor. I still can't believe that we're doing what we're doing and we get to have so much fun doing it. I mean, that's just kind of a long-winded answer, but it always will come back down to the base of this being your idea to do this. We've done it now. This is episode 160.
159er.
159er, not including some of the supplementals we've done. So we've done a lot, plus discovering Trek, and it's still amazing.
I can appreciate and agree with all that. I'm thankful for the fact that you finally gave in and said yes.
Only took a year.
I mean, it did. It took a good solid year. And beyond that, I'm grateful that people actually click the download button or the subscribe button on now a daily basis, because we see that all the time. So
yeah.
We could certainly do this and talk to nobody and still be just as entertaining to ourselves. But thank goodness for everybody who downloads.
Yeah. I'm thankful for experiences, and I don't want to sound like we're beating a dead horse because we've talked about it a few times. I'm thankful for experiences like Emily in Albany a couple weeks ago. Young girl listening for the first time, really enjoying the show, really enjoying Star Trek, and we get to see that love of a new show like Star Trek through the eyes of someone who's only 12 or 9, however old she is, because 9 years old. And to me, that's very special. We watched at a time when we were that age, but now that we're adults, we get to see what that reaction is on the young generations. And I think that's really very special. So that whole experience with her and her dad a couple of weeks ago is something that I'm extremely thankful for, because it's something that I have not experienced before. And I really, really loved it.
Well, if you've made it this far in the podcast and have listened to two old geeks bloviate about what they're thankful for, truly, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for being here each and every episode. It means the world to us. And Jerkface, if you're ready, we're going to do this.
Shut your head. Coconut.